Hello, my voice is audible.
Yes, you're
Okay, we are on live and you can start.
okay. Good afternoon and a warm welcome to everyone joined in today's webinar session conducting on the occasion of 60th Wildlife Week, October 2022, from 2nd to 8th, on theme of recovering key species for ecosystem restoration, celebrating. Joined us today to speak on Avifauna of Eastern Ghats with special reference to Northern Coastal Andhra Pradesh is Sri Raja Bandi from Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research, Tirupati, and Ms. Chiti Arvind, PhD,
Divya, your voice is breaking.
in Andhra Pradesh. A brief introduction about Ma'am. Chiti is a PhD student at the Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research in Tirupati. Her research interest lies in avian bioacoustics. She is currently working on cultural dialects and song and genetic connectivity in a species endemic to the mountain cloud forest of the Shola Sky Islands in the Western Ghats of India. She is also involved in projects that use passive acoustics.
Divya, voice is not coming. Your voice is not audible.
Is it audible now?
Yeah, now okay.
Ramna, is it
Yeah, okay.
so? Shall I start from the introduction?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, a very good afternoon and a warm welcome to everyone joined in today's webinar session conducting on the occasion of 2022, celebrating on the theme of recovering key species of ecosystem restoration. Joined us today to speak on Avifauna of Eastern Ghats with special reference to Northern Coastal Andhra Pradesh is
Divya, your voice is again breaking.
Sri Raja Bandi, Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research, Tirupati, and Ms. Chiti Arvind, PhD student from Bird Lab, Indian Institute of Science,
Divya, 1 second. Your voice is not clearly audible. It's breaking in between.
and research to track a rare bird, Jerdon in Andhra Pradesh. Okay, 1 minute. I'll change the place. 1 minute. Is it audible now?
Yeah, now okay. It's clear.
Is it audible? Okay. She research in Tirupati. Her research interests lie in avian bioacoustics. She's currently working on cultural dialects in song and genetic connectivity in species detection and biodiversity monitoring of species in a space. Also involved in projects that use passive acoustic monitoring of species detection and biodiversity monitoring. Over to you, ma'am, to please begin your talk.
Uh, Hi, everybody. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Hi,
Yes,
everybody.
ma'am.
My name is Chiti Arvind, and I am currently a PhD student at the Indian Institute of Science Education and Research at Tirupati. Um, Today I'll be talking to you about a project that where we used acoustic technology to track a rare bird, and this rare bird just happens to be in our home state of Andhra Pradesh. This was work done by our lab group along with other collaborators from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and the Nature Conservation Foundation. So, to give you a bit of background, let us first look at the biodiversity of India itself. So, India is known as a biodiverse nation and is one of the 17 out of 190 countries in the world that supports about 70% of the world's biodiversity. It has around 4 of the 34 global biodiversity hotspots, namely the Himalayas, the Indo-Burman region, the Western Ghats, and also a part of the Nicobar Islands that occupy the Sunda land. There are about 91,000 species of animals and over 45,000 species of plants in our country itself. And in these biodiverse regions, we have a large number of endemic plants and animals. So, what really are endemics? Endemics are species that are found to inhabit only a certain geographic region of the world. And it is also considered to be a proxy measure to measure biodiversity. In a recent categorization of how biodiversity is to be measured, these particular hotspots, to be qualified to be a hotspot, require around at least 0.5% of all the plant species to be present in this area. So, endemic species endemic species do serve as an important conservation priority because they have a very restricted distribution. So as you can see out here in the figure alongside, India supports around 4.5% of endemic birds of India, right? And how many endemic birds are present in India? So India harbors around 76 species of endemic birds. And here are a few endemic images of endemic birds that are present in our country. The first is the forest owlet, which is found in central India. The next one, the next panel shows the Nilgiri wood pigeon that is restricted to the Western Ghats, the Malabar barbet, that is the figure alongside it. And then the last figure is the yellow-throated bulbul that is found restricted to peninsular India. So amongst all these endemic species of birds, one of them happens to be the Jerdon scoser. Now, the Jerdon scoser is listed as critically endangered under the IUCN Red List. The IUCN Red List basically classifies all species on the earth based on how endangered they are or not. And the Jerdon scoser falls under the critically endangered category. In Under the Indian Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, the Jerdon scoser is listed under Schedule 1, which awards it the highest degree of protection. This bird is found endemic to the Sri Lankamaleshwara Wildlife Sanctuary, which is found near Kadapa in Andhra Pradesh. And it is a small area of around 400 square kilometers only. And this bird is only restricted to this very small region in India. And what is interesting is that the last confirmed sighting of this bird was in way back in 2008. So a little bit of a brief background to the bird itself. The Jerdon's Kosa was named after Thomas C. Jerdon, a British physician, zoologist, and botanist who happened to also collect the samples of this bird for the bird collections in India. And this was in the late 1800s. And after that, there were no records of this bird in our country. And it was rediscovered much later, nearly around 9 decades later, in 1986 by Dr. Bharat Bhushan when he was working in this region and he was a part of the Bombay Natural History Society. Subsequently, Dr. P. Jagannathan, one of the collaborators to this current study that I'm talking about, intensively studied the Jordan Scozo from 2000 onwards. So there were several ways to track the Jordan Scozer and several methods that have been used before. And the primary method was, yes, as you can all guess, by doing physical searches in the night. So the Jordan Scozer is a cryptic nocturnal bird. That means its activity period is during the night. And the two monitoring approaches that have been used for this bird was one using tracking strips and the other by doing camera trapping. So what are tracking strips? Basically, Dr. Jagannathan and team laid out these sand strips in separate patches in the Sri Lankamaleshwara Wildlife Sanctuary and smoothened them out with a hard roller. And then they left the tracking strips unattended for a long period, for a particular period of time, and then revisited the strips and assessed the footprints that were present in the sand. So the Jordan Scozo's footprints are really unique because they have three outward facing pointing toes and they tried to detect the presence of the bird using these tracking strips. Then the second technique that was utilized was camera trapping. Camera trapping essentially uses two camera traps that is placed at a certain height, at a certain distance from each other, and they have an infrared beam that passes through them. So when any organism or any living creature passes through this the space between these two camera traps, it triggers an IR sensor and an image is taken. So between these two techniques, tracking strips were found to be really intensive and labor intensive an approach. And since they had to smoothen out the sand and lay it out, and they also have a very small coverage area across the entire landscape. And similarly, camera traps only work between the tracking strip, between the two traps that are set on the trees close by, right? They do not capture images from the entire area. So again, they are also area restricted. So we thought that we should try another technique, and another technique that we thought would be really useful in the case of finding such a rare bird is by using acoustics. And the Jordan Scorzer's call is very unique and it serves as its acoustic signature. So here is, the Jordan Scozer has a very infrequent calling pattern. And what is interesting is that it has a very stereotypic disyllabic call. So here below, you can see the call of the Jordan Scozer. Here is a spectrogram representation, which is basically a visual representation of an audio signal. Here you have time on the x-axis and frequency on the y-axis, and this is the call. So disyllabic call means that it has two syllables, as seen in the second half of the call. I'm going to play the call right now so you can hear what the bird sounds like. So it is a very stereotypic disyllabic call. So we thought using acoustics would be a great method to try and detect this bird. But first, let's understand what is bioacoustics. So bioacoustics is a cross-disciplinary science that combines biology and acoustic technology. And there are two main ways in which we can collect recordings. One is actively and one is passively. Actively means like you hold a recorder along with a microphone physically in your hand and point it towards the target source as seen in the image above. Here we have a student of our lab holding a parabolic microphone along with a recorder. And passively collection of data happens by using automated recording units, which is shown in the figure below. These are hard recorders that can be placed on trees and that can be programmed to record calls from the sound, from the environment around you. So, what really are the advantages of using passive bioacoustics? You can cover a really large landscape by using a few of these recorders. There is a reduced human effort to monitor a large area. The recorders, as I mentioned earlier, can be programmed to follow a certain schedule. So they can record in a certain period and they will then go off during the period you don't need to record. There is also no observer bias when you're doing any detections or identifications. And the interesting thing about this form of data collection is that the data can be stored. So the acoustic data can be stored and always reanalyzed later. So to use acoustics to track the Jerdon's quasar, we had two primary objectives. The first was to create a suitable field protocol where we need to deploy our recorders in the target site. And the second half of our aim was to create a detector that identifies the Jerdon's quasar's call from the collected recordings. So let me talk a bit about our study site first, which is the Sri Lankamaleshwara Wildlife Sanctuary. The habitat type is an open scrubland type of vegetation, and the temperature in summer gets to about 45 degrees Celsius, which is really hot, and you have a really highly landscape vegetation difference between the monsoon and the summer season. So in the figure below, the left side shows the dry season, which is only has a few green plants. And then you have the just after the monsoon season where you have all the grasses that reach up to over 1 meter in height. So to undertake our first objective, which was to create a field protocol, I shall talk a bit about that. We graded our landscape by with 1 by 1 square kilometer grids. So in the inset maps, in the above inset map, you can see a red colored patch that shows the entire protected area of Sri Lankamaleshwara Wildlife Sanctuary. And inside that, this is in figure B. And inside in figure B, you can see a white square that is enlarged in the larger map that you can see. So there is a very small portion of Sri Lankamaleshwara Wildlife Sanctuary where the Jerdon's quasar has been detected earlier. So this was gridded with 1.1 1 by 1 square kilometers grid, and we deployed around 17 of these automated recording units, these passive acoustic recorders. We we set the recorders to record on a nocturnal schedule from dusk to dawn, and we collected recordings for over 5 months. We also visited these recorders every month to change batteries and collect data in SD cards to replace them with fresh SD cards. So for our experiment, we used four types of commercially available recorders. The first was a song meter 4, which is in the top left corner of the screen, which is made by Wildlife Acoustics. The second is a Swift, which is a white box that is made by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. Then a rugged Swift, which is in the bottom right corner, which is also another Swift, but in a more weatherproof casing. And in the bottom left, you have the audio mods, which are really small devices. You can see two of them on the screen. They are manufactured by Open Acoustics. So field deployment consisted of putting these recorders up in trees. As you can see, one of our collaborators, Viral, here is putting the recorder at about 2 to 3 meters up in a tree, and alongside is us trying to program the recorders before deployment. So a few summary results that we have are that we wanted to compare all the four recorders. So the most expensive recorder is the Song Meter 4, and the cheapest recorder is the Audio Moth. They also have different detection distances. So they have an acoustic recording radius, and the minimum distance was 500 meters. So that's why we set our recording radius to 1 kilometer, which is our grid size, and the mean total data collected per recorder and the mean hours of running. So now that we collected so much of data, we collected over 24,000 hours of data, which comprised 8 TB. So once we have all this data, we needed to analyze it and create a detector that will be able to identify the Jerdon's quasar's call from out of this 8 TB of recordings. So for that, we needed to create a detector. And to create the detector, we first need to know all the species that are found in the Jerdon's coza's habitat that may vocalize, have a similar vocalization to the Jerdon's coza itself. So what we needed to do is first find out all the birds that are found co-occurring in the Jerdon's coza's habitat. So for that, we took an eBird checklist of the wildlife sanctuary and shortlisted all the birds found in the Jerdon's coza's habitat. Then we further shortlisted species that have calls which were very similar to the Jerdon's coza's call. This was done by cross-checking calls that are available in this website called Xenocanto, which is a repository of all bird songs. So now that we know of all the species that vocalize similar to the Jerdon's coza, we need to create our detector, also known as a recognizer. So we used two different programs to do this. One was Raven Pro and one is Kaleidoscope Pro. And basically, once we feed in all our data through these recognizers, it generates a number of detections. So these detections are what the recognizer feels that are the Jordan's coastal calls. But since there are species that vocalize very similar to the Jordan's coastal, these also might be in these set of detections. So how do we overcome that? We need to manually cross-check all the detections that are generated by our recognizer with the calls of birds that we have already shortlisted from before. So we manually cross-check all the calls and they fall into two categories. One is known bird calls and the other is unknown bird calls. For the known bird species, one of the possible species could be the Jordan's coza. And for the calls that our team was unable to identify, we created a questionnaire and with all these unidentifiable calls and sent it to experts in the field of bioacoustics and those who are familiar with bird calls and asked them to rate these particular calls on a scale of 1 to 5, ranging from most likely to be the call of the Jerdon's coza to least likely to be the call of a Jerdon's coza. So now to cut the long story short, we actually did not find the call of the Jerdon's coza in this 8 TB of recordings, though we did create a recognizer that could accurately detect this call because we found a few calls that were very similar to the calls of the Jerdon's coza, and we found 4 calls that were unidentifiable to us. So what was our interesting finding is that we found this call that you can see in the spectrogram out here that seems to be very similar to the Jerdon's coza call, but did not fit the disyllabic criteria. So the Jerdon's coza's call has 2 syllables, but this call has 3 syllables, but it was very similar in structure. So this was included in our list of unknown calls, and we sent these to 11 experts and asked them to guess what it was. And they said it was very likely to be the call of the Jerdon's coza. So now one of our team members, Viral, decided that we should check the context of the call. And context of the call is nothing but examining the recordings that fall before and after this target call. And what he found was something really interesting. So here you can see the Jerdon's coza's call, like it's a compressed spectrogram in the center at about 3640 at the time limit of 3640. But this was surrounded by calls from various other species like the Indian thickney, the bulbul, and interspersed with calls of the bayback shrike. So now we know that the bayback shrike is a bird that mimics calls of the other species. And this particular bird could have possibly mimicked the call of the Jerdon's coza. So now the point is that this call instance was only found once. It was not found in 2 hours of the recordings that were before and after this target call. So it could be it. We feel that it could be a sign of mimicry, but the presence of this mimicry cannot confirm or refute the presence of the Jerdon's coza in our landscape because we still need to do more studies. And the bayback shrike is a diurnal bird, and the Jerdon's coza is a nocturnal bird. There is a possibility that the bayback shrike could have heard the call of the Jerdon's courser and mimicked it, but was this the call that was heard several generations ago and has been incorporated in the vocal repertoire of the bayback shrike and been transferred across generations is something that we are unable to say with this much of information. So, to summarize our study, uh, we came up with a few outcomes that we were able to create a detection framework using automated recorders to detect the Jordan's cursor. Our recommended field protocol is to use 1 by 1 square kilometer grids and use the rugged recorder because that can be programmed, can be left for about 6 months unattended, and it will record this nocturnal cycle every day. Since they also have a larger battery life because they can hold about 12 batteries in it, unlike the other recorders. And our recommended software protocol to use as a detection. So we use two types of software. We recommend using Raven Pro because that works better for stereotypic calls like that of the Jordan's cursor. And a few limitations to our study is that there is a very high initial investment because of the cost of the recorders. And sometimes the recorders might also malfunction, like we had in one of our instances where we lost 1 month of data from one recorder. And there is also variability in attenuation properties in the landscape. Now, this means that since the vegetation can differ from every grid to grid, it means that the sound recording radius might differ because denser the vegetation, lesser is the sound transmission. So perhaps systematic studies also need to be done in different vegetation types before setting a recording radius. So future direction in our lab is that we hope to so the study that we did was restricted to a very small region of Sri Lankamaleshwara Wildlife Sanctuary, and we hope to expand placing automated recording units in 3 other regions of Erpedu, Golapalli, and Venkatagiri. And we hope that by expanding the study and by collecting longer annual term of recordings, like more than 4 to 5 months over an entire year, if we're able to collect recordings, that would give us some more insight as to whether the bird is present there or not. Because if the bird is present there, it is definitely going to vocalize at some point of time. So that is all for the talk, and I would like to thank our funding sponsors, the Wildlife Conservation Trust and IISER Tirupati, and also the Andhra Pradesh Forest Department for all their help and unwavering support during all our field visits to Sri Lankamaleshwara Wildlife Sanctuary, and also the Nature Conservation Foundation and the Cornell Lab of Ornithology for having very constructive discussions with us to help us shape this project. So thank you. This is our bird lab at IISER Tirupati, and we also work on an array of research on birds all over peninsular India. So I would be happy to take any questions now.
So thank you, ma'am, for the most insightful presentation. It was interesting to know about Jerdon's course, the important bird, and it's on bioacoustics and your future direction about Jerdon's course. It was quite interesting to know. So moving on to the second session, I would like to welcome Shri Raja Bandi from Indian Institute of Science and Education at Research, Tirupati. Tirupati, a brief introduction about Sir. Sir is from Vijayawada in Andhra Pradesh and currently working as Citizen Science Coordinator at IISER, Tirupati. His work includes on nature to citizens of Andhra Pradesh, mainly children and youth. He conducts regularly nature walks and bird walks and support local institutions in forming nature clubs and bird watching clubs. Sir will speak us today on Avifauna of Eastern Ghats with special reference to Northern Coastal Andhra Pradesh. Over to you, sir, to please begin your turn.
Yeah, thanks, Chiti. And thanks, Chiti, for the nice talk and the intro to the bird lab. Can everyone hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, sir, it is audible, sir.
Right. I'm just starting sharing my entire screen now. Right. Can you see my full screen?
Yes, sir.
Right. Yeah. A very good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sekhar, and I'm working as a citizen science coordinator at IISER Tirupati. And today I'm going to speak about the Avifauna of Eastern Ghats, which is a very broad subject, and we have very little time today, like about 30 minutes, and strongly believe that 30 minutes is not enough to speak about the Avifauna of Eastern Ghats. But I will try to cover the one important aspect, the northern coastal birds of Andhra Pradesh. And before going into the details, so I would just like to tell you that if you have any questions, you can just feel free to ask at the end. Myself and Chiti will take the questions. So, so we all know that there's a lot of research happening in the Western Ghats of India, and we have the Eastern Ghats on the east coast of the India, running all the way from Karnataka till Odisha. So the Eastern Ghats is mainly um, of discontinuous chain of mountain ranges. So it's not similar to Western Ghats, which is more continuous. As you can see, there are a lot of gaps in the Eastern Ghats, and mostly these gaps are plains or delta regions between the largest rivers in the east coast, Krishna, Godavari, and we have Penna River in the south, just somewhere around here. And in the picture, you can see the Himalayas as well. Um, so, speaking about the extent of the Eastern Ghats and its expansion in the east coast of the India, majority of the Eastern Ghats mountains are in Andhra Pradesh. You can see it's about 40% of the Eastern Ghats are in Andhra Pradesh, and 5% is in Telangana, 25% is in Odisha, and 25% Tamil Nadu, and a little bit of it in Karnataka, mostly where the Eastern Ghats meet the Western Ghats. And also the Eastern Ghats is dissected by Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna, Penna, and Kaveri rivers. And the fauna in the Eastern Ghats is very, very similar. I mean, when we speak about the northern Eastern Ghats, like about the Godavari River, the fauna is very much similar to the. I mean, the flora is very much similar to the Himalayan relic species. A lot of studies earlier from the landscape, including the regions in Rampa and the Gudem landscape north of Godavari, recorded a lot of species which are only found in the Himalayan region. So the avifauna of Eastern Ghats in Andhra Pradesh is not much studied as the avifauna of the Himalayas in the Western Ghats. So looking back into the history of the Eastern Ghats avifauna, the first detailed survey or the systematic survey was done in 1930. It's called the Vernai Survey of Eastern Ghats, right, starting from the Palakonda Hills in the southernmost tip beyond the Nalamala. Vernai expedition uh, extended all the way up to the Visakhapatnam Ghats in the north, and 130 species are recorded. And the survey took place between 1929 and 1933, or 1931, sorry. And after about 90 years, now we have a lot of data available on the open source um, platforms like eBird. And the current data from the Ghats, I'm not speaking about the complete state, but from the region, like the high elevation regions in the Eastern Ghats, is 350 species approximately. A total of 470 species of birds are recorded in Andhra Pradesh. I think over 470. The checklist is yet to be concluded, and I think the current species list of Andhra Pradesh is more than 490. Of them, 350 species are found in the Ghats and the forest of the Ghats. So this actually tells that almost 60% or more than 60% of the avian diversity of the Andhra Pradesh is in the Ghats zone. So the Eastern Ghats in Andhra Pradesh can be geographically divided into the southern Eastern Ghats, uh, which is all the way from the Velikonda range till the Nagari Hills. before they merge into the Javadi Hills in the Tamil Nadu. And the Central Eastern Ghats is moreover like very much fragmented. So the hills in the Prakasam, Guntur, Krishna, and West Godavari districts are very much fragmented and they are not continuous. So the hills in the north of Godavari River, which extends all the way to the Srikakulam and the Vijayanagaram districts, these can be termed as the northern eastern Ghats. You can see the Rampa and the Gudem Hills, and then the Madhugula Hills, and then the Mahendragiri Peak, which borders Andhra and Odisha. These are the northern eastern Ghats. Yeah, politically speaking, the northern eastern Ghats are very much in the districts of Andur Sitaramaraju, Kakinada district, Anakapalli, Vijayanagaram, Srikakulam, and Padatipuri Manyam districts. So these are the new districts that were formed recently. So, so the east coast of the Andhra Pradesh is very much diverse. Anywhere from the coast, you travel towards west for about 100 kilometers or less than 100 kilometers at some point, you just enter the Ghats. So the habitats vary from high elevation forests and open lands, high elevation grasslands, to the rich and dense moist forests in the hill slopes, and then to the plains and open lands and scrublands, and then to the inland water bodies and the coastline. So within 50 to 100 kilometers distance from the coast of Andhra Pradesh, especially in the north coast of Andhra Pradesh, the diversity of flora is very much um, you know, distributed within a very small area, supporting a lot of diverse species. So, for example, the East Godavari district itself recorded more than 400 species of birds, which is like almost more than 80% of the species found in the state of Andhra Pradesh. And then if you look at the migratory bird flyways, we all know that birds do migrate, and they do stick to the standard migratory routes globally, which are called the bird flyways. So if you look at the east coast of the Andhra Pradesh, two major flyways pass through the east coast of the Andhra Pradesh. One is the Central Asian flyway, and the other one is the East Asian and Australasian flyway. So the birds which do breed in the northern hemisphere and migrates to the southern hemisphere, some of them pass through the east coast of the Andhra, and some of them winters in the east coast of the Andhra. So in this way, the east coast of Andhra Pradesh is very much critical for many species in the passage as well, and also they are good wintering grounds. So many of us who are from the Andhra Pradesh, we know that some of the largest freshwater lakes, very much closer to the coastal region of Andhra Pradesh, or in India, or in the east coast of Andhra Pradesh, like the Kolleru Lake, and also if you go up to the Visakhapatnam district, we have the Kondakarlava and the Naupada wetlands in the Srikakulam district. So these flyways pass through some of these very highly diverse coastal wetlands as well, supporting a lot of bird life that are in passes or that do winter here. So as I mentioned earlier, so the northern coastal Andhra Pradesh, if you look at the coastal region, you see all these major habitats, from forests all the way to coastal wetlands and the shorelines, and also the mangrove forests, which are very much restricted to East Godavari and the Guntur districts in the state of Andhra Pradesh. So let's quickly look at some of the birds of these habitats. So more than 400 species of birds are recorded from these habitats in the northern coastal Andhra Pradesh. So again, from the northern 5 districts alone, more than 400 species of birds are recorded from Andhra Pradesh, supporting a lot of bird life in the region. So let's look at the forest habitats. So the forest habitats, especially the Gudem and Maripaklu landscape, which is very much closer to the coastal region of East Godavari and the Visakhapatnam district, is home for this abbot babbler, a species which is only known from the northeast part of the country, and it was also recorded uh, in the West Bengal as well. Um, so the southernmost record of this species is in the hills of Gudem Maripakali landscape. And most of you know the Maradimilli uh, in the uh, in the Allur Sitaramraju Manyam district, which is recently formed. So the abbot babbler is only restricted to these hills north of the Godavari, uh, and it was discovered. And this population of the abbot babbler in the Andhra Pradesh was discovered in mid 1980s by Dr. Krishna Raju. So the subspecies of the bird was named after Mr. Krishna Raju. So you can't see this species anywhere else in the peninsular India except Andhra Pradesh. And one more species is the buff-chested babbler. Again, this is a species only found in the northeast and some parts of forest bordering Odisha and West Bengal. And this is also recorded. You can see this purple spot here. So this is where the sighting of the bird happened. This is recorded from the west, from the Ghats of the Visakhapatnam district in Andhra Pradesh. But the current region, it falls into the Allur Sitaramraju Manyam district. Again, this buff-chested babbler is a very skulking species and only recorded twice from the state of Andhra Pradesh. So these kind of species, which are only found in the northeast, actually represents the kind of fauna that these forests hold. I mean, the flora and the fauna these forests hold. So some of these species are only restricted to the Himalayan foothills, and then they are found in the Andhra only. And one more record, this is a very recent record that was published from the Visakhapatnam. So this is not even recorded from the interior Ghats of the coastal region. But this is recorded from the Kailasagiri hills in Visakhapatnam city itself. So the Chinese sparrowhawk, this is the first confirmed record of the species from the mainland India. So the previous record was from the Andaman Nicobar Islands, but from the mainland India, this Chinese sparrowhawk was only recorded from the Kailasagiri hills. Again, there was a nice note from 1991 from Bruce M. Beeler and Shahid Ali, who is from BNHS, who were working in the Ghats at those times. There is a confirmed sighting of the Japanese sparrow as well, probably the only record of the species from the whole of the country. So these sparrowhawks, which actually pass through this region and which are restricted to the East Australasian flyway, are very much recorded from the northern eastern coastal region of the Andhra Pradesh and the hills adjoining the coastal region, like very much close to these hills. But the previous records were not that many because we don't have a large bird watching community. But in the recent years, there is a healthy growth in the number of the bird watchers in the state of Andhra Pradesh, and we are seeing a lot of new records coming in from all across the state. And one more important species that was recorded from very close to the coastal region of the northern eastern Ghats is the blitz paradise flycatcher. This is also a forest-dwelling bird, but it's only recorded last year, and this is the first confirmed record of the species from the subcontinent again. And this was again very casually recorded by a bird watcher who mistook it for a paradise flycatcher, like the Indian paradise flycatcher, which looks very similar, but it turned out to be a blitz paradise flycatcher. And then subsequently, the bird was recorded again on the south of Godavari River. And then the next record was from Telangana, very surprisingly. So this is the new distribution of the bird from the Andhra Pradesh and the Telangana regions. but the first record is from very close to the coastal Andhra Pradesh. Again, there are so many surprises coming up these years because the bird watching community is very much dwelling in the state of Andhra Pradesh, and people are taking up binocs and cameras, exploring a lot of habitats. So, so I'm not going through all the species, but mainly these are the some species of rarity and importance that were recently recorded from the region. So from forests, if you go to the coastal wetlands, so the coastal wetlands are nothing but the lakes which are closer to the sea, which are a bit fresh water to saline water, and open lands and marshes that are very close to the coast. Like all these are the coastal wetlands. So some of the species that we find in these coastal wetlands of the Northern Eastern Ghats are wood sandpipers, which is a migratory species. So we have other sandpipers as well that visit these regions, like the green sandpipers and the common sandpipers, which is also well known. But the wood sandpiper, they arrive early than the other two species, and now if you walk at any paddy fields in the north coastal region, you'll get to see a lot of wood sandpipers. And another specific bird that is restricted to the coastal wetlands in the northern Andhra Pradesh is the pied everset, a beautiful bird, which is the black and white in color, which is an upper curved bill. So again, Kakinada, to just explore these Coromandel wetlands in Kakinada, or the other small wetlands around the Visakhapatnam and Srikakulam districts, you will very much get to see this pied everset bird. And this bird breeds in Europe, Central Asia, Russia, and China. So these are all the wood sandpiper and pied everset are long-distance migrant birds which winters in India. And the oriental darter, this is although this bird is very much found across all wetlands, but this required a special mention because of the population of the bird is believed to be reducing at an alarming rate. So um, the recent the State of India Birds report concluded that the population of these birds are decreasing. So even if you go to mangrove habitats and any kind of wetlands in the northern Andhra Pradesh, you'll get to see these birds very much everywhere. And these are not that common these days in the other parts of Andhra Pradesh. And also, I would like to refer to some of these ducks or geese species. So the first one is the bar-headed geese. The name itself suggests it has nice black colored bars on the head. And this species breeds in Mongolia, Tibet, and Ladakh, and the winters in India. Again, these birds used to be recorded in very good numbers, like some hundreds in numbers earlier in Srikakulam, Visakhapatnam, and East Godavari districts. And if you visit the Kakinada wetlands, the Coromandel wetlands as well in Kakinada, you'll get to see these birds in good numbers every year. And another rarely recorded duck is the ferruginous duck, the Ferruginous pochard, we call it, which breeds in Europe, Southwest Asia, and the Northern Africa. And this is very rarely recorded duck. I think there are less than 10 records from the state of Andhra Pradesh. Last year it was recorded from the Rajahmundry. Again, there was only one individual that was recorded after a long time. So sometimes the coastal wetlands throw a lot of surprises like these. So we strongly recommend all the bird watchers to regularly visit the coastal wetlands of Andhra Pradesh to record these kind of surprises. And the red-shelled duck, also they visit the the northern, like the wetlands in the northern Andhra Pradesh, very much in very good numbers. Although they are pretty common across some of the wetlands further south, in the Krishna, West Godavari districts of Andhra Pradesh, but you will only see them in good numbers in the northern region of the Andhra Pradesh, the wetlands of the northern region. So these red-shelled ducks breeds in Europe, Mongolia, and China. And these are one of the earliest arrivals So probably I think by the end of this month or earlier next month they will arrive before any other ducks. And then we have the greater flamingos. I don't think flamingo needs an introduction. It's a beautiful species. Um, so these are also very much recorded. I mean, they used to be in large numbers as per the historical records in the Andhra Pradesh, but the numbers visiting Pulicat in the South Andhra Pradesh are very high. But the recent records from the Northern Andhra Pradesh, they're very less in numbers. I think there are very few reports from Vizag and Kakinada. I think there was one record earlier this year in January. A single individual was spotted. And the spot-bill pelican, which is fondly called in Telugu as Kolletikonga or Godabatu. So the spot-bill pelicans are very common in almost all the heronries across the Andhra Pradesh. Telukunchi in the Srikakulam and Kolleru um, and all the way to Nelapattu. The spot-bill pelicans are pretty much everywhere. But some of these populations are believed to be migratory, but a lot of studies are still need to be initiated in the landscape to understand the movement of the species, whether they are locally migrating or whether they are migrating from somewhere else, like out of the country or probably Africa. We don't know. We know that, I mean, there are studies which concluded that the flamingos or like some of the flamingo populations are migrating from Africa, but very less studies are taken up for the spot-bill pelicans. The spot-bill pelicans can be found in very good numbers across the wetlands of northern Andhra Pradesh. And then the grey heron. I think most of us get to see the purple herons, which are more darker in color, darker purplish in color. That are common across all the wetland habitats, even in the inlands of the Andhra Pradesh. But the grey herons are very much restricted to the coastal Andhra Pradesh. You will rarely see them very much inland. But after Pulicat, the northern Andhra Pradesh holds some good population in the coastal area, especially the Koringa Wildlife Sanctuary. The grey heron population is very much everywhere. Like you will see them in very good numbers. And then because we mentioned about the coastal wetlands, which includes the mangroves as well, and the other um, species. Um, this is one of the rarities, like the masked finfoot was last spotted in the Koringa Wildlife Sanctuary, as per the historical records, but the bird was never found again. Uh, so this is one more possibility. So there's a good chance of finding this bird in the northern coastal wetlands of the Andhra Pradesh. There are no recent records of the birds, and the habitat of the bird is fastly reducing. And there are confirmed records uh, from further north, the West Bengal region and Bangladesh, but unfortunately there are no recent records from Andhra Pradesh. Hopefully someone will find this market finfoot someday. And then the shorebirds. So you can see that the shorebirds are completely different from the forest-dwelling birds or the inland wetland birds, some of them. So they are habitat specialists, and they're very unlikely to survive any other habitats. You can see a lot of bills, um, birds that actually probing. So they keep on probing in the sand very deep. So that's why the bills are very long. So they probe for shrimps, they probe for marine worms, crabs, a lot of small mollusks and crabs, a lot of other things, insects along the coastline. So let's look at some of the shorebirds that visit the northern coastal region of the Andhra Pradesh. So godwits, we have two species of godwits that visit Andhra Pradesh. So these are long distance migratory species that breeds in Iceland, Europe, Central Asia to Siberia. With a nice long beak. You might observe them in the shorelines or some of these wetlands as well, or the estuary lakes and all, probing into the soft mud and sand for mollusks, crabs, and other food. So very similarly looking, but with a down curl bill, we have the Eurasian curlew, which is again is a shorebird, a larger shorebird, and they are the winter migrants to the northern Andhra Pradesh. They breed in northern Europe, Arctic, Russia to Siberia. Okay, it's a nice, beautiful bird with a long bill. Um, they do probing as well. They keep on. You will see them um, doing the bill into the wetland, wet surface, like up and down probing, looking for prey. And then a bird which very much looks like curlew, but with a smaller bill. It's a wimbrel. So this can also be found in the on the beaches, um, and the shorelines, and also some of the mangrove habitats as well. During the low tide, you will see these curlews and wimbrels probing at the edge of the water bodies or the coastline during the low tide line, just probing for a lot of um, food in the soft mud and sand. So the wimbrels also breeds in Northern Europe and Northern Asia and America. So these are long distance migrants. They travel thousands of kilometers to winter in the northern Andhra Pradesh. And we have this beautiful ruddy turnstone. Um, People who bird regularly in the northern Andhra Pradesh know where to find them. So very easy to find them in the Kakinada, in the Koringa Wildlife Sanctuary. Again, these species breeds in Northern America, Alaska, and Siberia. Very beautiful bird. This one is in a breeding plumage. And these winter in the northern eastern coast of Andhra Pradesh. And then we have knots. We have great knot and the red knot, um, which are almost of high conservation concern, and their population are very much reducing. And the IUCN status is, I think, endangered and critically endangered for great knot and red knot. Um, so they look very similar, except the underbelly markings and the length of the bill. So structurally, um, these knots look very much similar. And they are only found, they're only recorded in Andhra Pradesh, in the northern Andhra Pradesh from the Koringa and the Koringa Wildlife Sanctuary and the Visakhapatnam. Um, but the great knots are being recorded in very good numbers these years. So probably if we can protect uh, more of the habitat in the northern Andhra Pradesh, like the estuaries, mudflats from the region, we get to see them in more numbers probably. Hope to see them. And these great knot, red knot, curlew, godwit, all these species are also protected under the Arctic Migratory Bird Initiative (AMBI). So there is a plan for the protection of these species and their migratory paths as well. Um, Probably, some of us can actually contribute to the data and the long-term monitoring of these species. And the last one is the pelagic birds. So I left it a big question mark. Most of us um, don't know these pelagic birds because these birds can't be seen inland or at the coastal region, but they're very much restricted to um, the sea. So the pelagic birds can be only found in the sea, foraging and hunting and feeding on the fishes and other floating carcasses in the seas. Unfortunately, in the state of Andhra Pradesh, and it's not only Northern Andhra, but for the whole of Andhra Pradesh, there is very less data, or I would say no data on the pelagic birds. Except I think one isolated frigate bird record from the Andhra Pradesh, there is no data on the pelagic birds. There is not even a single systematic survey of the pelagic birds from the state of Andhra Pradesh. But there's a good potential. We strongly believe that so, there's a lot of potential in the region to explore the pelagic birds, and hopefully there will be some explorations in future in the northern coastal region of Andhra Pradesh for the pelagic birds. And with this, I'm just ending my presentation. And I'm more than happy to take any questions. And I thank the Indira Gandhi Zoological Park, Visakhapatnam curator and the whole team for this kind invitation. And I thank all my bird lab members and the IISER Tirupati for supporting a lot of research in the landscape, not only in Andhra, but all of the country, the birds and the other species, including small mammals. And also we have a very good citizen science program. empowering and doing capacity building for the people of the landscape and the Andhra Pradesh Forest Department as well. So thanks again, and I'm more than happy to take any questions.
Thank you, sir, for the insightful presentation on Avifauna of Eastern Ghats, along with species of their importance, along with coastal wetlands. So, moving on to the questions from the first session. Um, what are the diagnostic methods to distinguish the footprints of Jerdon courses from other species, ma'am?
So the Jerdon's gosa, so usually most of the birds have about 3 toes, 4 toes, but the Jordan's gosa characteristically has around 3 toes that are facing frontwards. And this is not a foolproof method because it can be confused with other birds like the sandgrouse also that has very similar uh, footprints. So it is not a short way of discrimination between the two. But there are certain measurements that show the distance between these toes that are used to find the Jordan sources footprints.
Uh, thank you, ma'am. Yes. Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to the second question. Callback is a method used in case of some birds. So, can we use the same method in the case of Jerdon's courser, ma'am?
So callback, I think you are referring to playback in this case. So actually, Dr. P. Jagannathan had done a lot of playback studies initially, and in a very few instances, the playback resulted in the calls of the Jordan's Goza. And to remember, in this particular study that we are doing, we are using automated recorders, which means that we are recording from the soundscape that is around us. So using playbacks is not going to be really helpful because those calls will get recorded in our recorders. So yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to the next question. So, does the Jerdon courser move between area and habitats, and when do they breed?
Oh, that's a great question. We don't really know much about the Jordan Sposer's life history traits. So it's still a big black box as to when it breeds based on we don't know anything about its breeding cycle. They have discovered like earlier an egg of the Jordan Sposer, but nobody knows since it's just one record. We really don't know what is their breeding season or breeding period, and whether they move between areas or not. Not really sure, since we haven't like no birds have been tagged in the past, so we do not know much about their movements or home range size either. So it's all a mystery.
Thank you, ma'am. So many things up to know about the Jerdon's cursor bird. So looking forward to know about it. Um, thank you for answering the questions, ma'am. Moving on to the second session questions. So the first question is, so how to conserve the wetlands for migratory and wetland dependent avian species? Sir?
This is a very broad question. So I think worldwide the wetlands are under immense pressure, and Andhra Pradesh is not an exception. So, I think the best example I can quote is um, um, the Kolleru wetland, which is very much close to the coastal region as well, and it is one of the best examples of how not to manage and treat a wetland. Um, However, I think wetlands are very unique in terms of protection, because these are not like the other habitats. So there's a lot of socio-economical issues that come in. So if you if anyone want to protect any wetland or conserve the biodiversity of the wetlands, I think it needs a larger involvement of the stakeholders in the whole landscape. So it's not just forest department or scientific community. I think there has to be a full-fledged commitment involving all stakeholders, like people who are living around the wetlands and the scientific community and the forest department, the local administration. Everyone should come together, and then um, there has to be very strategic ecological assessment that need to be done um, to make any kind of changes to the landscape or making any kind of developmental decisions without the involvement of each and every stakeholder. Not in a single wetland can be conserved in the current scenario. So, I mean, I might not be able to answer this like precisely, but what I can tell you like broadly, this can't be answered directly. But I can tell you that this needs a larger participation of the people and government and a lot of scientific organizations to conserve the wetlands. I think very
Uh,
recently at the Kondakar Lava in Visakhapatnam, a wetland committee was formed, which is a good sign.
yes,
So in the recent years, no other wetland companies were formed across Andhra Pradesh, and probably this is the first positive change that is happening in the landscape. And I really appreciate the DFO Visakhapatnam, Mr. Anil Shankar Garu, to take this initiative. And probably this Kondakar Lava can be a benchmark for the other wetlands protection in the state of Andhra Pradesh.
thank you, sir, for answering, Zoom. So moving on to the second question. Sir, as you presented from the slide, there are eight major migratory bird flies.
Mhm.
So which major area is preferred mostly during the migration, sir?
Which you mean preferred by the birds?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it depends, right? I mean, birds annually they follow the same migratory routes. Um, so, and sometimes these migratory routes also depends how. I think that the birds will get influenced by the stopover sites as well, because when flying, some of the species can fly non-stop, but some of them need stopover sites, like where they can stop, feed, and then fly again. So if the migratory routes are like having a very safe passage, like if there is no hunting pressure, and there is a proper stopover site for the birds, then obviously I believe, as per the bird behavior, most of the species will prefer these kind of routes. But if there is a lot of hunting happening and there's a lot of other pressure, probably the birds will start avoiding that particular route, and they might actually switch to the other route. So, no, I think it it depends upon a lot of other factors as well. Um, and like us, birds do make choices, and they're very smart.
Yes, sir. So moving on to the third question. While many extensive bird surveys have been carried out in Himalayas and Western Ghats,
Hmm.
so shall we expect any upcoming future directions for conduct survey in Eastern Ghats, sir?
Oh yeah, very nice question. So yeah, Eastern Ghats, when compared to Himalayas and Western Ghats, is kind of lagging behind in creating a baseline data of birds from the landscape. Um, but things have changed a lot since 2017. I think there's a lot of change. People started going out, taking bird watching as a hobby, and doing a lot of exploration trips and generating a lot of bird data. Still, um, there is a lot of unexplored regions in the state of Andhra Pradesh, especially in the Ghats. Um, Probably there will be more surveys in the future. Say, for example, out of our IISER Tirupati, we started a Tirupati bird atlas very recently to document the bird life of the Tirupati. So, similar atlas projects can be taken up all over Andhra in all the major cities and the towns adjoining the Ghats as well to create a baseline data of the birds on the landscape. And now I think going forward, there's a lot of new IAS officers as well in the department, and we can see that there's a lot of positive changes coming from their side. So yeah, definitely we can see that the change is coming, and it will be positive in the future.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for answering all the questions. So I thank all, the two speakers. So with this, we conclude the questions and moving on to the next vote of thanks. So we thank our today's speakers, Sri Raja Bandi, Citizen Coordinator, Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research, and Ms. Chiti Arvind, PhD student from Bird Lab, Indian Institute of Science and Education. I thank Dr. Nandini Saleria, IFS Curator, IGZP, for the continuous support for happening the webinar successfully. I also thank our online participants for their active participation and involving in the presentation. Thank you all. Thank you all everyone for your participation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Divya. Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot.
Thank
Yes,
you.
have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.